Hello, good evening. I hope you're all having a beautiful evening. Let me just see that everything is working. Yes, it looks like it's working. Fantastic. So as you can see, I'm feeling much better, although I have to say this is a little bit of an experiment because I have to try things to see if I'm well enough. Like I can't tell until I've done them, because you don't like start doing something and get vertigo. It's like after you've done something that it starts. So this is an experiment. So you are experimentally watching to see if this gives me concussion. It's been a month tomorrow since I did it, so I feel fairly confident that that I can do a talk. I might not do as long as I normally do, but we shall see. So first of all, we do the silent sitting. So we just sit for like maybe 10 minutes silently. I just really enjoy doing that before talks. And you can do whatever you like to do. Like sometimes I give recommendations, but know that whatever I'm recommending isn't actually prescription. It's a description of something that can happen. Like the story that we tell ourselves is that she tells me what to do and I do it. But that's a story that you tell yourself. That's not actually what's happening. And that's maybe like super obvious to most people listening. But for any people that are new to listening or new to non-duality or new to this exploration, then you might not have like considered this idea before. And so therefore, when I give meditation, you might think that I'm prescribing you something. Whereas who would I actually be prescribing to? Who is this center called you? Nice. So the meditations that I recommend, not because they're superior, but just because they're the ones that I did and I know, is first of all the mindfulness of breathing. And basically you concentrate on your breath in and you count every time you breathe in, and you count all the way up to number 10. So every time you breathe in, you count 1, the next breath 2, 3, 4, all the way up to number 10. And then when you get to 10, you just bring yourself back to 0. So then you start again. And it's just basically this. You count to 10 and then start again. That's it. It's so simple. A child could have made this up, but it can be incredibly complex to do, and you shall see if you try. The next one is moving your attention to the I am. And if you don't know what the I am is, then I can't explain it to you now, but it's basically this sense of being. But it's not like somebody is aware of that sense. So it's not like I am aware or I am conscious of the I am. It's this vibrant aliveness. I know a lot of teachers say there is consciousness and then there's consciousness of I am. So it's already a personal thing. But I'm talking about a beingness or an amness that is impersonal. So it's moving this attention back to this impersonality, which, yeah, really, is that possible? It's too complicated, that. But the next one is just sitting there and doing nothing. Just sit there and let the mind do whatever it wants to do. And this is based on the premise of like opening a fizzy drink. So you've taken the drink, you open it, and it like gets all squirty and upset, and you just sit there and wait for it to calm down. And the bubbles slowly calm down. Okay. We shall begin. Hello. Okay, we begin. Do you know, it's taken me all this time to realize that I could use my my Bluetooth keyboard so it doesn't make the camera wobble. You see Miss K walking behind me. She's not very well today. When she's not very well, she always wants to be close to me. Okay, here we go. So before we begin, have I got any announcements? Yes, I do have announcements. I just wanted to say that if you want to ask questions and you do so through Skype, my Skype address is Lisa Cairns 12. That's Lisa Cairns 12. And you're welcome to write a question or to call in. But if you call in, please put a note in the chat box, call me, with nothing else after it, so I can see it clearly in the chat. And have a headset with a microphone and good internet connection, and be ready, like have practiced on Skype so you know what you're doing. But then also, if you mess it up and it all goes wrong when it happens, don't worry about it. Like, no pressure. Also, there were other things that I had to share. Oh yeah, there's another channel called Video Clips, or Lisa Cairns Video Clips. It's not my channel. It's a guy who really enjoys the videos and he likes to edit them into smaller clips. And you can find that associated with my channel. And if you subscribe to that, then you can get edited video clips of these talks. So he does like all clips over all the years and finds really great bits and puts titles to them. Whereas this talk is just like a live stream of me sitting and doing a meditation at the beginning and then doing a talk on question and answer. Also, if you do want to call in, there's something that I seem to draw out in people is, I was thinking about it the other day, or maybe somebody said it to me, that maybe because of my feminine energy, like I draw out, when somebody comes to ask a question, they want to give me lots of detail and lots of information, and that's so beautiful. But I would really recommend booking a one-to-one session if you want to do that. If you book a one-to-one session, it's totally up to you what you want to do. And if you want me to listen to you for a whole hour, then I'm so happy to do that. Like, I have like a session in which I tend to do with people, but I'm always open to whatever somebody wants and if that's their desire. But it's not so appropriate in live talk. So if you are going to ask a question and call in, then it's better if you try to like home in on what it is that you want to ask. Like, so not phoning up for a chat. Or if you do phone up for a chat, like it's homing in on the specifics of what it is you want to talk about. So it's not, maybe phoning up for a chat is better if you do that in a one-to-one session. It's better if there's questions or a subject and you've homed in on what it is that you want. I know that when you call in, like all types of nerves happen and we go into automatic, and I do tend to have this energy where I draw that out of people. There's other people that don't draw that out of people so much. So it takes two to tango, I can acknowledge that. That is all. Okay. So let's go with the introduction. Let me find what the title was again. Stories about what is happening is not what's happening. Stories about what is happening is not what's happening. It feels really weird, that sentence. Like it's not quite right. Stories about what are happening is not what's happening. Yeah, that sentence is wrong. But we get the gist of it. We get the gist of it. So today and yesterday, in my free time, I've been trying not to watch TV or go on the internet so much. So I was listening to these talks about cults and this idea of cults. And I've spoken about it a lot in the past, and I feel like there is an attraction from my side to that subject. And I think it's because I can recognize through non-duality that in a way I've been in a cult. And I can also recognize that society is a cult. Like, so not only non-duality, but also society. And I don't say that in a victim way, and everybody's definition of a cult is different. It's, to me, what a cult is this dogmatic belief of stories, I suppose. And it's a belief that they are true, a belief that they are real, and an attachment to that. It's not necessarily a group of people. I think that's maybe there is more of what's defined as a cult, as a group of people. But it's not necessarily that. But there is also that area of cults where you form a group and you become isolated from society. To me, it's more this dogmatic belief of ideas and this belief that they are the truth. And I feel, for me, even though we contradict our stories about ourselves when we say, for me, we can't really remember. We can only remember ourselves from this perspective in this moment. So from this moment, when I look back on the story of Lisa, like, what I feel is that I could have got involved in any religion or any philosophical system. I feel like all religions and most philosophies are always pointing back to oneness, even sciences. I could have even got really deeply involved in science. So eventually they all come back to this oneness, or God moving through you, or this wholeness. And I feel like I could have got involved in any of it. Like, I'm really susceptible to beliefs and ideas. Like, my mind is really susceptible to breaking down old beliefs and finding new ones. Like, and pushing the boundaries and stepping outside of the box and looking at it from different angles. And I'm sure a lot of people that are listening to this talk have that momentum happening for them as well. But I kind of feel like non-duality, which I think is in all religions and philosophical ideas, well, not on all philosophical ideas, but a lot, like when it eventually comes down to it. But mythology, I mean, it's what our society is based on in the end, even though it doesn't feel like that. What was I going to say? I forgot. I forgot what I was going to say to that point. Most people are attracted to these ideas, are listening to this talk. I really can't remember. I have to start again. I've completely forgotten what I was talking about. I know what I was talking about, but I can't remember the thread of it at all. Like, often you sit there and it just pops back in, but not tonight. So basically I'm talking about stories and these philosophies, and I was super susceptible to these ideas. And the last couple of days, or yesterday it started, or maybe a few days before that, I started listening to this particular cult that formed this Mormon cult, this extreme Mormon cult that was about the end of days. And just listening to their ideas, firstly what it did is it made me realize like how much, when you really go into Christianity, like a lot of it sounds like non-duality. Like a lot of what they were talking about was giving up control and letting like God's word speak through you. And I realized, if I had been in America and near these Mormon people, like I could have so easily fallen into that, because there's something really beautiful in that. But there's something also really dangerous in it as well. And what's dangerous in it is this dogmatic belief in anything, this attachment to ideas. Like it sends us crazy as humans. And these polarities of right and wrong, good and bad, should, shouldn't, like are the polarities of the way in which we think. And our stories about ourselves, our stories about society, our stories about others. And basically what I was following was this lady who got involved in this cult-like teaching, and before that she had raised 6 children, and she got into it, and then she finally killed her last 2 children. Because she believed that's what God was telling her to do. That was God's word. And you could say that she's gone mad, like that's mental illness. But if you really examine like all our thought systems, like, I know that that's extreme, but if you look at our society, we also do really extreme things. I'm not saying that she was sane, madness and sanity is like an odd conversation. Like there is certain, like I've seen people have psychosis where they really lose touch with like the collective reality. But with her, like she still had like a connection to collective reality. And the way in which she went mad or where she went really extreme was in this idea of God speaking through her, like letting God speak through her. And God spoke through her and through others in their organization and said that the kids had like dark energies in them, and that the best thing for them was to die or to move on to the next realm. And this, like this is also happening in our society. Like for example, to me, our concept of trade and money and capitalism is a form of madness, but we will take that to be right and true and fair. Like our justice system is a form of madness to me. There's good elements to it because it helps us as a collective work together and to function, but there's also lots of madness in it, but we believe it to be true. The other thing that we believe to be true is that we are somebody inside these bodies that are separate entities that have control over our life. And we take that as truth. Society takes that as a truth. Like there's so many stories, like the idea that you have a child, like that doesn't seem like a mad idea, but when you really break it down, like the idea that you possess a child, that you own a child, we need that language in order to function, but we take it as truth. I am your mother. You are my mother. I am somebody which has a mother. Like Khaleesi certainly doesn't look to me like her mother or not mother. She's just like, feed me, woman, feed me. Where's the food? Chicken? Where's the chicken? Give me the chicken. Walk me, woman. She's not really saying that. She can't speak. Just sometimes. Joking. So all of these things we take as truth. Like we take as truth that what's behind me is called a wall, and that's what it is, our wall. And it's happening so quickly all the time, like our ability to name things, our ability to tell story about our environment, that it becomes fact. I remember when I lived in Australia, like going on a tour or something, or being told about like the Aborigine people and how they knew their environment through singing. And that really like sent fireworks off in my brain. Like, to know your environment through song would be a completely different environment. So they retracked and retraced their environments through singing songs. But can you imagine knowing your environment through music? We are so conditioned to believe our stories about us. And even when I speak in the positive, so when I start telling you what you are rather than what you're not, that is a story, which is totally mind-blowing. Mind is like, yeah, but I must be able to know myself through a story. But you can't know yourself through a story. You can't know God through a story. But yet God knows everything. Like, this is known. The stories are known. And that only happens in this moment. It's instant. It's right here. And even if you take that as a belief, so you take this as your new belief in which you're going to hold up to the world and proclaim to be, that isn't it. That's got nothing to do with who you are. You're trying to talk around who you are, but that's not who you are. So stories you tell yourself about who you are isn't who you are. Even the story of God moving through us, of there is no choice, there is no chooser, there is nobody here. This is a story which can become your new cult, which is super annoying when you meet people like that. And they're always like, who? Maybe you are one of those people that's preaching it to people all the time. Yes, but there's nobody speaking, so I'm not preaching. Yeah. I'm sure I'm that person often. I'm not excluded from that. I remember recently, maybe it was last year. Yeah, it was last year actually. I remember getting stoned, and I thought that people at this party were asking me about non-duality, and internally I was like, oh, I really don't want to speak about this. But because they were asking, it came out and I started speaking about it. And because I was so stoned, I couldn't really perceive what was happening. And then I suddenly realized, oh, they're really not asking me about non-duality. And I'd just gone off on this rant about non-duality. And internally, like, I don't like to really talk about it unless somebody's really interested. Like, I don't really like to talk about it. So maybe I'm giving myself a hard time, like I'm not really a preacher, but I do this stuff online, which I'm sure people find preachy. But in my past, I'm sure I was. Yeah. Like, language and communication has got nothing to do with non-duality in a way. Like, language is just a practicality. Like, you say, I have been shopping. You don't have to say nobody has been shopping. Not Lisa has been shopping. You don't even need to bring it up in conversation, because conversation, like the way in which you think and speak, has got nothing to do with non-duality. It might make you more free on the human level because your brain isn't going into neurotic thinking so much, so it's like more settled. But that's actually nothing to do with non-duality. Like, non-duality is this presence which is experiencing right now, which isn't separate from everything that's happening. There isn't even a presence that's separate. There isn't even a consciousness that's separate from what's happening. That consciousness is everything. It doesn't even need to be talked about. but yet it gets talked about. And it's a total mystery as to where words come from. Like the person is always thinking it's me and always feels like it's my mind in time that is producing this. And that's a functioning in which we can discuss. But when we come to this moment, it's actually that everything is coming from no place and no time, from absolute mystery. And that is so freaking beautiful. That is so beautiful. That is love. To me, that is love. To see that words right now come from nothing. No thing. So if it's not a thing, then it's everything by default. The room comes from not a place. The tree comes from not a place. The bookshelf comes from not a place. Not a thing. Nothing. So you could also see the tree comes from everything. The bookcase comes from everything. My words come from everything. This is everything speaking, everything looking, everything hearing. You could also say consciousness if you want, but consciousness is, you could, like, consciousness is misunderstood. You could also say consciousness is a functioning, but yeah. It doesn't matter, these details. It's more this resonance with what's been spoken. That this is God. So when you say everything, that also could be replaced with God. Or when you say nothing, you could also replace that with God. So it's God speaking, God hearing, God planting, bookshelf godding, no, God bookshelfing. But the problem when you say God is that this goes right to the heart of the human's narcissism. I am God. Yes, yes, baby. Ookie dookie dookie. I am God. I always knew I was God. I always knew I was the center of the earth. Hello, Ee. I'm talking to my computer, aren't I? You see, that's the problem with mentioning that word, is that storyteller, that illusory self, loves that because then it feels very superior to other beings. And often the ego and the person, the separate sense of self, feels very inferior, so it's always looking for things to make it feel better about itself. And that's not it too. This is very humbling in a way, because it's saying that you, the illusory you, is a functioning, and it doesn't really exist. But the watcher, that which is watching, which isn't a thing, and is all things, is God. So that also means on the depth, on the deepest level, that there is nothing that can attack you, there's nothing that can hurt you, there's nothing that can take away you, freedom. That sense of being. Pain and pleasure can come, but there's nothing that can take that inherent sense of being, that inherent looking. So there's never a place in which you can be unsafe. The person can feel fear, but that which you are isn't afraid. That fear is part of what happens in the human bodies. They are what we call mammals, and they have these fear. I don't know what that's called. Raptors, no. These fear things in the brain. And this is all that's wanted, is to know yourself. It's not wanted the end of fear. It's not wanted the end of arguments or the end of pleasure and pain. That's part of being human. It's what's wanted is to know yourself on the deeper level. That's the end of seeking. It's this home, this feeling at home. The person always feels like it's lost home, even if that's very subtle. It always feels like it's on a mission to try to get somewhere because it's kind of lost something, but it doesn't really know what it's lost or what it's looking for. And it gets all these ideas and it likes to go on missions and tell itself its stories about these missions. But it can't really get to that freedom because that freedom is what you are. It can make the human more balanced and make the life more comfortable and be more at peace. But the freedom is this moment. It's what's happening. So to me, the way in which non-duality is to be lived with in order to not become cult-like is to be human on the human level. So to know these differences. So what it is to be human and what it is to be a more balanced human. So you be human, you understand what the human is up to. So you understand, like, if you're shouting at somebody with anger, like underneath that, more than likely what you want is intimacy or that you're afraid. So you kind of like have this deep insight into being human and what it is to be human. And that ideally it's better not to shout at someone, like if you want a more peaceful life. So you kind of like become a more wise human, a more balanced human, a more understanding human. So, and the reason that you need to do that is because it's learning about this cult-like mentality that can appear in the human, and that using non-duality to make you have a better life or to feel better about yourself is not the answer. It can help the human have a better life, that the ideas can be relaxing for the human, but to me, really becoming more balanced is really getting to know the human and getting to know what it's like to be human and becoming very unjudgmental about what it is to be human. So there's that on that side. And then there's the other side where it's deeply known who you are, but that's not being used. So this deep knowing of who you are in every moment, this deep connection to Source, and this expansiveness, like this energetic shift. So you're not limited anymore, you're this expansiveness, and the character is appearing in that rather than prior. It's like the character is like center focused and so important, and you don't know who you are, or that you do know who you are, but it's still hidden in the background. So it's this shift round. So right now, who you are is everything, but that's not conceptual. That's experiential. It's like a shift in perception. And that's happening now, even if you feel limited as a person. If you really explore what you're feeling, you'll notice that there is no boundaries on anything that you feel. The hearing and the heard are one. The seeing and the seen is one. The smelling and the smelt is one. The feeling and the felt is one. The thinking and the object is one. So there is no subject-object. It's this shift in perception. And then the human becomes more balanced, but it's not trying to be a perfect human, because that will trigger or that will just elongate the seeking. You understand the limitations of what it is to be human, like our tendencies to be cult-like about everything we do, to believe in ourselves, to not want to be vulnerable, to want to be all powerful, or want to be the victim, or whatever it is, or to have these like ingrained responses to situations. to have annoyance, to have fear, to have jealousy, but not hiding that, to be real with it. And also to know that it's not necessarily yours. Like there's like, you could call telepathic beings. Like as soon as you walk into a room, you're feeling other people's feelings. You're kind of having other people's thoughts. I mean, where does your thought begin and another end? And I don't just mean that like that you're picking up other people's thoughts. I mean it as in like everything that you think now is a result of what other people have thought. You can't think outside of this society. You can't think outside of what you've been taught. Somebody else invented the word humble. Somebody else invented the word you. And you're using all of that and then thinking. I don't know if that's making sense. But in the end, it doesn't really matter. Your freedom is what is. It's what's beyond the person. What is here now. This is the freedom. This is the freedom. As soon as you start getting into the perfect human, you start getting into cult fucking land. Ooh. Cult fucking land. Ooh. She swore. Yes, I remember somebody once sent me an email saying the reason I sweared was because of repressed sexuality. Yeah, so because it's like following this ideal, like it's about power, like this ideal of a perfect person, the ideal of them having things that I don't have, of them being better than me, of them having a perfect life. And so this person, they believe that they are enlightened, or that they are free on the human level, or that they are free of all conditions and habits. And then this creates a cult-like mentality, because that's impossible for that to happen. There is always going to be habits and conditionings appearing in someone. And we can't tell what's perfect or what's not, what's the right one or what's the wrong one. That's what the cult would then have to define. So it's good to feel happy, it's good to feel joy, it's good to feel peace, it's good to feel love, it's good to feel monogamy. So that's what the cult has to define. So then everyone has to try to be like that. Or the other cult might be, it's good to be polyamorous, it's good to lie, it's good to cheat. It's good to have all these negative feelings, and then that becomes the cult. And it's seeing the difference. Like human is human. We have these ideas, we have these behaviors. They are going to improve. They're going to get better. You're going to have some people that are more in denial and unconscious on the human level, and then you'll have more which are more evolved and can see deeper into themselves. But that's just being human. Everyone can learn to be more evolved. But having love in your heart or kindness in your heart isn't better than the other ones in terms of enlightenment and awakening. It's better for more peaceful relationships, more peaceful and harmonious personality. It's knowing these differences. We've defined what is goodness. To Khaleesi, being nice isn't a good quality. Who cares about being nice to Khaleesi? She's like, rip the chicken's head off, lick all its blood up, roll in it, get all the blood all over me. She doesn't care about being nice. It's a human condition which we have imposed onto ourselves. If you are not nice, then you are going to hell. Although I will say I prefer to hang out with nice people, but that's not about awakening. Awakening is that which is experiencing now, which is love. Love, 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 love. Well, I have done a lot of talking. Oops. I don't even know if I'm broadcasting anymore, I think. Am I still? YouTube says something went wrong. That's so funny if you're sitting here talking away and there's nobody listening. It's kind of what's happening. Oh. So I'm still streaming, but there's something wrong with editor. Okay. So I'm still streaming, but it's still there. It's still working. There's something wrong with, okay, editor. Okay. Something went wrong. That's okay. As long as it's still working. I'm not talking to nobody. Something went wrong. Okay, so let's go. So let's have questions. So these are the rules with questions. So if you want to write me a question, you're welcome to. But preferential treatment gets to calling in. And for that, you put call me. Don't put anything else after it, so I can see in the Skype chat those that want to call, so I can just scan down and see it. If you want to call in, then you've got to have a headset, microphone, good internet connection. And I will call you when I'm ready. And also try to prepare so you know what you're going to ask, and try to limit it to like under 1 or 2 minutes. I mean, even 2 minutes is maybe being a bit generous. I'm not trying to hog all the space here because I love the sound of my own voice. It's just that that's kind of what this is that questions are asked and then there's an answer given. If you want to elaborate on your story or have more of a conversation, then it's better to book a one-to-one session. If you want to elaborate on your story or have more of a conversation, then it's better to book a one-to-one session. Okay, let's go. Okay, there's still a problem with YouTube editor, but it's still working. So here we go. Okay, let's go. Okay, nobody's put call me. They're all too afraid now because I've said that. So here we go. Okay, let's go. Okay, nobody's put call me. They're all too afraid now because I've said that. So here we go. Okay, nobody's put call me. They're all too afraid now because I've said that. We are now hearing an echo after you checked YouTube. Oh, right, sure. Because I've not got the volume off. Okay, sorry. My apologies. Thank you for telling me that, Nick. Yeah, so if you also see technical issues, please tell me because I do this all by myself and I can't tell. So that's cool that you told me that, Nick. Danke. Something to do, yeah. No, it's, yeah, my editor's wrong and then I put on the video to see if it was working and then it talking. But yeah, there's now an echo. Pretty sure your YouTube is on. We're hearing everything. Also 20 seconds. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Hi, Lisa. There's an echo. Danke. Your voice is echoing or looping. Okay. Still broadcasting. Okay, call me if you would like. Okay, I call you. Ike. Yes.
Hello. Hey. Ike. Yeah. Hi. Yeah, I hope I can sing. Okay. So basically it's like it happened like around last Christmas, that I suddenly like realized that everything is just happening. So like from that on, it seems to me like everything is just happening to this, I don't know, awareness, which I am, or I don't really know how to describe it. And oh, okay. Hello.
Yeah, I'm back. Okay, so carry on.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm wondering like what this is, or if you could say something about this.
Can you just tell me what happened to you at Christmas again?
I suddenly realized that everything seems to just be happening. Like there's no, like thoughts are just happening and decisions are just happening and everything that's going on is just happening. And yeah, I don't know if that's something you would call a glimpse or something, or
that's really beautiful, and that is a glimpse. Like, I don't know if you'd been into this subject, been listening to this subject, or what happened, but it's seeing that there isn't actually somebody inside the body doing this life. Like, the body is having these impulses and these urges, but they're not actually controlled by a central figure. There is like a storyteller that appears that tells you, or is claiming to have done everything, and then that becomes this dogmatic belief and this energy that you are in control of your life. And then it seems through life this begins to break, and it can break in doing art, it can break in playing music, it can break in being in love, or it can just suddenly snap, and then it's seen that everything is just happening. It's not somebody's happening, it's not somebody's doing, which is beautiful. It's like flow. It's like seeing that this life is like flow, like you are happening, like the trees, like the birds, like the breeze, like the sky. And so is everybody else. In another way, you could say, like in the Course in Miracles, they talk a lot about forgiveness, and you could say like this realization or this experience is also forgiveness. And when I say that, it's like seeing that there's nobody doing, that there's nobody that ever did anything wrong.
Yeah. And then it's like, at the same time, it's like, I mean, it's been like that for a few months now, but it's still like when I'm like interacting with other people, I'm constantly forgetting it again. And it's mostly when I'm alone that I remember it. And is that something that's just like going to sink in over time, or?
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen through time. Like more than likely that it will become more and more present. What you could explore is what happens when you're with people or with others. Like what pulls you into feeling like you are doing, because it's actually a really interesting subject, because when it's really examined, you'll see that who you believe yourself to be is relational. So everything about the illusionary you is about relationships to other objects. So when we're present with other people, it often stimulates this idea of me. And often, like a lot of our socializing is about boosting other people's me's, other people's selves, and boosting yourself. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's part of survival in a way, but it's seeing that there is a lot of attachment to that, and there is a lot of security found in this illusory I. And so what pulls you into that when you're in social situations and when you're by yourself, like what feels more relaxed. But that's just an exploration that can be done. It's also not so important that this is happening by itself.
Yeah, that's then again the weird thing that when I think about it, it feels like, I don't know, it's all just happening the way it is anyway. So there's it's like a loop.
Yeah.
And but when I explore it it definitely seems to be like more on the feeling level than on the thinking level. So even when I can think about it and remember it through thoughts that everything's just happening, there's still this like feeling level that seems to separate everything. That makes sense.
Do you mean like feeling like that everything's happening is like a feeling level? Like if you think about it, it doesn't really make sense. Yeah. No, totally. It is non-verbal. Like even just saying this story about everything happening is our way of interpreting that experience, which is non-conceptual.
Yeah. I've even tried to explain it to friends and I couldn't really describe it. They were just like, hey, what is he talking about?
Yeah. And maybe they weren't so interested either, because it doesn't really do anything for people. Yeah,
I also think like 10 years ago I bought like books from Ramana Maharshi, but didn't really understand what he was writing there. And when I look at this now, it's like a totally different book.
Yeah.
It's strange.
Yeah, that's really sweet. Yeah.
I think that was my question. I have to look if there was the other one. No, I think that was it.
Nice. Oh, thanks for calling in and asking those questions. I really like talking with you.
Thanks for calling.
Pleasure. Have a nice evening. Guten Abend.
Dir auch.
Tschüss.
Tschüss.
Oh, hi, Carola. Your sound is You're back, yes. Yeah, I think my sound is still on, right? Yeah. Just having some technical issues, as always. When is there a stream when there isn't technical issues? Ah, danke, Eike. Fine now. Danke, Thomas. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Brian, for the comments. Do you think it could be that whatever we are is the result of brain activity? Hey, Johnny. Is that who it is? Yeah, Johnny Bravo. I'm sure that's your name, right? Johnny Bravo. I mean, that's really like, what is brain activity? Like if you go into the brain, it kind of looks like a nebula. So where does brain activity come from? So maybe that's the way it's happening, that everything we're seeing now is brain activity. But then you have to question what brain activity and where does brain activity come from? Thanks, Johnny. Bravo. Hi, Lisa. Who and it to? Hi, who and it to? Just a suggestion, maybe just silent sitting won't hurt your concussion. Hi, who and it to? Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I mean, I did silent sitting at the beginning of this talk, but it is unknown because there is activity happening for me in just sitting. Like, so when I do meditations on retreats, it's easier to say it like this than it is to speak about it through the internet, because it sounds really crazy through the internet. But when like I do meditation on retreat with people, I feel I work as hard as doing a talk energetically, because like what seems to happen here is I am whatever I'm with. So I become whatever I'm with energetically. So if there's lots of people in the room with like heavy energy, then that's what I become in a way. And then there is something in me that's processing it really quickly. So it's like it's not being held onto, so it processes it quickly, so that energy can move a lot quicker. So I don't know if silent sitting makes a difference for me. I'm not sure about internet as well. I feel like I can still pick up people through the internet, but that might be like, again, that's a belief. We don't know in the end, we're just here. We're just here. And that comes out of my mouth to be said. Brain is a mystery. Yes, it's not my real name. Johnny Bravo. Who is Johnny Bravo? Who Anitu? Who Anitu? I wrote that last week, Lisa, not today. Oh, that's strange. It just came up today. Orchids. Hi, orchids. That's definitely your real name, orchids. I've known many people that are called orchids. Hi, Lisa. Great to have you back. It seems to me that I am fluctuating between two states continuously. One is the conscious observing the character. The other, I completely forget the consciousness. I am just in what I am, just living without there being an observer. I was wondering if you could comment on that. Thank you so much. The question that I would like to go to, and this might be related to words, it might actually not have anything to do with what's happening there, is who, like, so you're moving your attention to, throughout the day, you're moving your attention to this conscious observer, and that to you is judged as better than just everything, like just being in the flow and letting your mind do whatever, because you've been taught that, I presume, and because of experience. And I would say on the human level, it is like a good thing to do with the mind. It's like you see the stories you're going into, you become conscious of the story you're going into, and you're pulling yourself back. But who knows the consciousness? So you feel like you're putting yourself into the big observer, but who knows that? So what's being talked about is this energetic shift to the observer, which isn't an activity. But I don't harp on about that too much, or maybe I do, but I don't really realize it, because that can make the person feel really hopeless, because the person always wants to do something about his predicament. So the person is like a doer. It's like, I'm going to go and get some nuts, I'm going to pick some berries off the tree, I'm going to clear up the dog poo, I'm going to walk my children to the park, I'm going to do something about my emotions, I'm going to become more conscious, I'm going to become more enlightened. So it's like a doer. It's got this mentality of doing, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it then gets into a belief system that it's going to practice this, and it can put itself into consciousness. But who can put itself into consciousness? There is the appearance of doership. There is the appearance of somebody putting their attention into this moment, which is great. Like loads of people recommend that. I think it's super healthy. I think it can also be an avoidance of emotions, but through time that you should begin to become more conscious of that. But who is it that's doing that? And who knows that consciousness? This everything and nothingness that is being talked about is instantaneous perception. It's not something that can be seen with the mind or anything that can be known in time. It's observing. It's knowing itself. It is itself. It's not knowing itself separate from things. It is knowing itself as things. It's so intimate. And this is what oneness is. This is what not two-ness means. And that's happening in the experience there. But what's also happening, more than likely, is a fixation on this person. And this person maybe believes that it's got to put practice in it to get to enlightenment, which you can tell yourself that story if you want to. It might make you feel more motivated. It might make you feel better about yourself. And if it makes you feel better about yourself, go for it. But then there can also be this like chipping away of that, like who? The observing is here. The observing is happening. It's not something you have to work for. You will work for it till the end of days if that person believes it can get it. And the whole time, that which is watching is here. It reminds me of this Buddhist story, which I never get the names right, but you have to bear with me. It's about this, I'm just going to go for it with the names and just understand that I'm dyslexic and I get all my letters back to front and can't remember the pronunciation of things and words and names. So, there is this man that lives in the forest who was once a university lecturer. His name is like Ratnagona or something like that, but it's Buddhist name, you know. And he is like highly intelligent. And for some reason, he gets the idea that he has to go into the forest and kill 100 people and get 100 fingers, cut off their fingers, so get 100 fingers and make them into a necklace around his neck. And it's like something to do with his work or mythology or something. But he gets this idea into his head, just like we get into the idea that non-duality is truth. Like that what we speak about non-duality is truth. Or ourselves, we get this into our head. He got into his head that he had to kill people and get all their fingers and stick it in the necklace around his neck. I'm sure Khaleesi, if she was human, this is something she would like to do. Except it would be chicken heads. So he had killed 99 people and he'd got 99 fingers and he had one person left to kill. And the Buddha is in a local village and he's just about to walk through the forest and all the locals go, don't go in there. There is Ratnagona in there and he's going to come and he's going to kill you and he's going to chop off your finger and he's going to put it around your neck and his neck and you're going to be dead. And the Buddha's just like, he waves his hand. He pulls his lips upside down and he begins to walk into the forest. And Ratnagona sat in his tree, sees the Buddha, and he's like, yes, my last victim. Woohoo! So he jumps out of the tree and he starts chasing the Buddha. But no matter how fast he runs, he can't catch up with the Buddha. He runs and he runs and he runs, but the Buddha stays the same amount of distance in front of him. Eventually, exhausted, he's like, stop! You're moving too fast. I can't catch up with you. And the Buddha turns and says simply, it's not me that's moving too fast. It is you. I am perfectly still. Beautiful. Beautiful. You could say that Ratnagona represents the mind and the Buddha represents absolute. That's what you could say, but you could interpret it lots of ways. When I was listening to this Mormon podcast yesterday, I heard them interpret the Lord of the Rings in pro of the Mormons, and I was like, I've heard lots of people do that in a non-dualistic way too. Okay, I forgot where I was, so I'll just take another question. Hello? I'm still got sound. Brain is most complex known object in the universe as far as our scientists know. Yeah, because they can only look at it from the perspective of the brain. So they're like, yeah, the brain is the most complex thing. They can't look outside of the brain. So there could be something way more complex, but because our brain can't register it, we can't see that. So we're like, yeah, the brain is the most complex. That's true because our scientists say it. But okay, I take you for your word. I don't know if scientists say that, but you say scientists do, so I'll go with that. What I'm wondering about is, do you believe in other worldly things like souls? Consciousness is a word that doesn't really mean much. So can this material world be only things that exist in a way? And what we call a soul is just the result of brain activity. Does this whole non-duality thing need to be mystical? Or is it just science or reality? I don't know what people mean by soul. Some people use the word soul as like the bottom of your foot. Some people use the word soul as this like entity that lives inside the body and carries on after people die. And some people use the word soul as in like the soul of music, soul music. So I don't really know. I presume you mean it as in like this entity which carries on. And it doesn't really matter if there is like this soul which carries on or doesn't. That's not the point. The point is the belief that that soul is you, and the belief that that soul is separate. So even if there is this phenomenon of like some energy inside of us which carries on from this life to the next life or goes to heaven, that's just part of the story. What non-duality is pointing to is the observer, that which observes, isn't separate from that which it's observing. So the subject and the object aren't separate. So I don't really mind about all these types of things. Like there could be so many complex things happening in this world, and so many more things happening than what we know about or talk about. More than likely there is, because we've made up language anyway, so our language only fits what we currently know about. And I never forget that story I read once about like these Aboriginal people had never seen boats before. And maybe they'd seen small boats, but never big boats. And when they came towards their island, the locals couldn't work out what was happening, because they could see different formations happening in the water, but they couldn't see the boats because they didn't know what a boat was. So they just couldn't see it. And it wasn't until they got closer and until people started coming off the boats that they began to recognize that there was this like floating house in the sea, or what they thought was a floating house. So until they had labeled it, they couldn't really see it, which is really kind of crazy, like what our brain is doing. So imagine what could be out there. But that's different from non-duality. Non-duality is talking about this freedom, which is watching right now, no matter what crazy dream we have about this reality, whether we have multiple dimensions and lots of souls and afterlife and heaven and hell. That's all part of the story happening in apparent time. Does this whole non-duality thing need to be mystical? No, not at all, because we made up the word mystical. So it doesn't need to be mystical. That's our concept. People like that. I mean, what you could say is non-duality is mystery, but that's a word that we use to point at something which we just don't know what it is. We can't describe it in words. But yet it's here watching. But we can't stand outside of it and look at it and name it. Or is it just science? Science is another myth and another dogma that we've made up and we believe in. Like it's great science and it does great things, but like isn't it like quantum physics and string theory, like they're trying to make them bridge, but they can't, and both of them seem to have truths in them, but they can't make them bridge. They don't work together. I'm not sure if that's true, but if that is the case, then it's like seeing that also science is man-made. Science isn't truth either. It is true, it's fact. We made up fact, we make up science. There seems to be things that are pointing more to something like there appears to be evolution in this world, and evolution came from the idea of science. But also you could look back at what the idea of God was, that all of this is made by God. And then if you look at science, science would say everything is made up of energy. And then if you named God as energy, then there would be the same things. Well, whatever you realize, the truth, can it be just brain doing its thing? Is it more natural, a more natural way? The brain can interpret what happened, but no, what happened is what happened. And that, I mean, like, it depends how you label brain activity. If you label brain activity as everything that's happening in this world, then yeah, it's brain activity. But it's beyond the brain activity, the truth. Like, so that realization is beyond the brain activity. Yeah, that begins to get really complex. I'm tripping myself over in words there. I can't really answer that question. It depends on what we mean. Science works much better than anything else. You're using technology, right, thanks to science, right? So it works. It is the truth. I don't know if I would label science the truth. I would see that as a dogma, another dogma. But it seems to have more coherence with what's happening. So it's a better way of describing things. So it's a better way of us manipulating our environment in order to be creative than other systems. But I wouldn't say it's truth. If it was truth, then why can't they link up quantum physics and string theory? Like, why can't they work gravity? I think it's gravity into quantum physics. Like, why don't they meet? Whatever you realized that thanks to your brain. The brain recognizes it's happening, so the brain registers it. And if the brain was here, then this world wouldn't be happening. But you're getting obsessed with the idea of brain. Like, if everything is brain, then it's still oneness. Like, if everything is an interpretation of the brain, then it's still oneness. Like, what makes up the brain? How is it a dogma if it works? It's a dogma because you believe it to be truth. It seems to work, so we seem to be able to use science to manipulate particles, to manipulate energy. So we can use these systems to manipulate our environment better. But that doesn't mean it's truth. It doesn't mean that gravity is truth. That's the way of us describing it in order to manipulate our environment. Yes, they don't know how quantum and gravity works. Science don't know everything yet. It's never going to know everything. We made up words. We made up science. We are like tiny little beings with this tiny little language. Your brain is oneness, okay. It depends how you phrase. I mean, like, if you said everything was brain, but like brain activity. Because I also say at other times, like, we're walking through our brains, like that's true in a way as well. It gets complicated, these details. But to rest in peace in the knowledge that everything that I teach intellectually isn't it. Like, what's it is what's happening right now. The mind goes back and forwards, true, false, fact, fiction, lie, truth. I think I said that. And then what is it that's here right now? What else is happening? You're using technology right now thanks to science. Yeah, science has done a good job at manipulating matter to work better for us. I will agree. Doesn't mean it's truth. I suppose maybe you don't understand what I mean by the word truth, like the way I'm using the word truth. So you and other people, not you particular, but other people have invented this word science, and it's invented ways to create experiments, and it's invented all these different words and all these different labels. So they were invented. And then we think that our way of thinking about things is things. So we think that the computer is computer, that I am I, that the wall is wall. And we believe in these things. So we believe in this idea of science. But what I'm trying to say is that everything is ideas. They're not truth. There is no truth. And our language is based on subject-object. Our science is based on that. Although science is getting really into it and really beginning to see that there isn't subject-object, and then it gets very confused, but doesn't really know what to do with that. I mean, how can we really interpret that quantum physics in some way suggests that things appear because they're observed, and when they're not observed, they're all possibilities? I mean, that's way beyond our possibility to digest that information in words. But yet in this moment, it's true. Right here, right now. Like everything is all possibilities simultaneously. Yeah. Maybe that's enough. Now I go on. Oh no, he's writing more. Maybe he's not writing more, he's just got his cursor in the text. Type a message, and he's got his cursor in there, and I'm waiting. 100 or so people are waiting. Okay, I'll move on. So happy to see that your body is feeling better. Lots of love and gratitude to you, Lisa. Thank you, Carmela. Thank you. Okay, thanks. Thanks, Johnny. Luca. Yes, call me yes. I just put yes to give people a little bit of warning. Oh, pardon me. Oh, well, he's going to get no warning. I can see he hasn't seen it.
Hello.
Hi, Luca.
Oh, how are you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you. How are you?
All really good. So I thought of a question for you.
Okay.
So I've had intellectual realizations that, there isn't really anybody doing anything. Like when the me appears, it's not the me that decides to appear, it just appears.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's something missing in that realization, that it's not with my whole being. Like it's just with, it's more than intellect. It's more than just an airy fairy intellectual thing, but it's not with the whole of me yet.
Yeah.
I'd like for you to describe the difference between the two.
Yeah. So to me, the shift is an energetical shift. And what happens when you're awakening, so when you're, I mean, that's a very grandiose title, awakening, but when this is beginning to be seen, when that's happening, there is like this in and out. So there is this energetic expansion where you feel more in flow and more seeing that there is nobody, and seeing how impersonal this life is, and that there isn't separation. And it's not an intellectual seeing, it's a knowing. So it's this expansive energy. And then there is this contracting energy. And there's a contraction, and then you feel very focused on the separate person and the person's life and the stories it's telling. And this seems to happen when getting into this subject and when having these awakenings, or whatever we want to call them, is this fluctuation between expanding and contracting. And often what happens is that when we expand, we have positive feelings. So because there's less seeking when we're expanding. So there's less seeking, there's more positive feelings, and we don't really notice that we're expanding. But if the next time you feel happy, you look at the situation, you'll realize that you feel less located. You think the happiness is maybe your partner or like your job or your situation, but it's actually because of feeling more expanded.
Yeah.
And then when you feel more contracted or more suffering or more pain, you'll realize that you feel very dense and very located in the body. And when you have these expansions, if you're into this subject as well, simultaneously, you're seeing all these things, the mind will have intellectual realizations as well. And then the body-mind gets updated with this information. So it'll realize that things are just happening. It will realize that there isn't somebody there. And then the mind can become more calm, or the mind can become more peaceful with itself. Because normally the mind has lots of like abstractions and unnecessary thoughts going on.
Yeah. For me, I've noticed the mind is always active. It's always running the same treadmill, especially like daydreams. It creates this fantasy. It projects something in the future that it wants to grab, and it says, that's my happiness. And it's doing that all the time.
Yeah, totally. The more you're into this subject and the more that you have these awakenings or these expansions, that will begin to fall away. So your fantasies about these happinesses, so whether it be buying a house or money or whatever it is, they will begin to dissipate, because it's like in the mind, well, what happens in the mind is it begins to learn through experience that it never works. These fantasies never work. They never actually give you what you're looking for. So it just begins to dissolve those fantasies. And that you'll still have like momentum. So you'll still have a desire to eat, or desire for sexuality, or desire for having a home, for comfort. But they will become reduced. They'll be a lot less important. They'll just be seen as functionings. Like they're just pleasure and pain. And you have a certain amount of pleasure and pains, then you begin to realize it's the same. And really what you're looking for is this expansiveness.
Yeah, to not be me.
Yeah, to not be limited.
I think that's it, honestly.
Oh yeah, nice. Whereabouts in the UK are you from?
Kent.
Okay. Yeah, I grew up in Berkshire, so not too far away.
Oh.
I thought you might be from, I imagined you were from like Newbury or somewhere, like in Buckinghamshire or something. It sounds really similar. You sound really similar to where I grew up.
Yeah.
Nice.
You probably didn't guess that, judging by my name.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, nice. Oh, thanks for calling in. Nice to speak with you, Luca.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
This is from Johnny Bravo again. If you can get results, if you can manipulate reality, then it is true. Then it is true. Doesn't matter the labels, the names, the words, the technology that we are using right now doesn't depend on what it is called, words, labels. If we can manipulate reality, then it's true. I think we're using the word truth in different ways. Yeah, I can't think that through properly right now, Johnny, but I feel like just because you can manipulate something doesn't mean it's true. But like, it's language again, but I also understand what you're kind of saying. You're kind of saying like it's more true than, say, somebody saying God is good. Like, that is something that you can't really grab onto. Whereas if you say like, if you put this and this together, it creates that. If you mix this and this together, then it explodes. Then that has more truth than saying like God is good. But I think that maybe I'm speaking a bit, like going a bit further than that idea. But at the same time, it's just a word. Truth. Thanks, Johnny, for your questions. I enjoyed them. Ike. Oh yeah, thank you. This expanding and contracting movement you've just been describing really resonates. Feels like that's what's going on here with me. Yeah. It's like a change in perception, because what happens is that consciousness, or who you truly are, is hidden in the background, but it's actually everywhere, but it's seemingly hidden in the background. And it's like the whole screen is covered up by the human and the person. So you've got this like consciousness, like the everything in the background, and then the whole screen is focused on the person, like the person. And what happens in awakening is that swaps round, and the person goes into the background, or the person becomes more ghost-like, and then everything is known. Like, so you're like, what's experiencing is nothing. What's speaking is nothing. It's no longer a person speaking, but it functions through the person. So then the interesting thing is like, what makes up a person? And what makes up a person, like, so what we would say in non-duality is the seeking energy. And what I would say that is like an attachment to the wants and the desires. So that's what makes up a person. So in psychology, like if you have a weak sense of self, like what they would work on is your narrative about yourself, but particularly your wants and your desires. So psychology, not all psychologists, but I suppose I should say what type of psychology would do that, and I don't know. But one thing they do in certain types of psychology is focus on the wants and the desires of that person in order to create a stronger sense of self. Isn't that interesting? And then non-duality, Buddhists, Hindus would say then that and even Christians, I think, Muslims would say then that your detachment from God is about your desires. So detachment from God is about desires, and it's not really the desires. We need desires in order to move, to breathe, to function. It's this attachment to it and a belief that God is found in those pleasures. And this is our suffering as humans, this attachment to the person, the desires of the person, and the belief that God is found in your desires. So God is found in your pleasure. God is found in your happiness. Whereas actually God, or what you're truly looking for, is found in this moment, is what's experiencing. And when that shift around happens, then that is known, like the desires are there, that's part of being human. Like to have the desire to eat, to have the desire to drink, to have the desire to go to the toilet, to have the desire to have sex, to have the desire to have fun, to have the desire to work. That's part of being human. But there's no longer this like total enmeshment in them where they're believed to be you. Like if you break up you'll realize that it's all based around desires. Your desire to become an accountant, your desire to have a home. Like it's all these ideas and labels that are based around desire. I know that sounds weird, but when you really examine it, you begin to see these things. And it's this attachment to the desire. So for example, say if someone wants to be a business person, they'll begin to wear that. So say if someone wants to be an artist or a musician, they'll begin to wear that. They'll begin to want to become that. You see, it's a desire. They want to be or to be seen as an intelligent person, they'll wear that. And they don't want to be seen as bad, they wear that. They want to be seen as bad, they wear that. It's like always about our desires of what we want to be. And then we're creating this idea. And then there is this attachment to that's who I am. I am a business person. I am an artist. So we have these desires to want to be that. And then we wear it. And then we say, that's who I am. And that's not who you are. You're not a mother, a father, a child. Who you are is presence. And in that appears the person, which has these labels. And when that's known, it's like a detachment from those desires. Those desires are simply desires. They're pleasurable. I couldn't care less if people see me as a spiritual teacher or not, or an artist or not. Like, I mean, there's some desires of what, like, I want to I don't want to be seen as a bump, I don't want to walk around like looking like all tatty and like terrible. But it's at the same time, who cares? What else is there? Desire. There's a desire to like match my clothes, to wear jewelry. There's a desire to write. There's a desire to speak about this subject. There's a desire to be kind to my partner, but it's also like that's nice, but it's not freedom. Like when I was younger, I remember these things were so important, and if someone didn't see me as nice, it was so uncomfortable, it was hellish. If somebody didn't see me as Buddhist, it was hellish. I was Buddhist for many years when I was younger. Someone didn't see me as like intelligent, or they saw me as stupid, or maybe not that so much. Whatever. Blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean. Okay, well, that's the end of the questions. Thank you for being my experiment and seeing if I can go back to work. We don't know. I've got sessions tomorrow. Maybe I wake up and I have to cancel them all, but hopefully not. I'm going to try to do my sessions tomorrow. Maybe I wake up and the world is spinning again. It doesn't actually spin when I get concussion. What it actually feels like is that I do have like that type of vertigo where the world is spinning a bit, but it's more this sense of being pulled in two different directions. That's what it felt like, concussion. Another way I described it was like a bell being gonged, and it's like zzz. I can't, yeah. It's weird. Okay, so that's that. And I wish you a beautiful evening. And I shall see you next week, hopefully. If the concussion subsides. Send you lots of love. And I wish you not just one thing or two things, but I wish you with all my heart everything. I wish you everything. Nice.